My name is Major Jeff Deem. I was in Battalion 2 that day. I was working an overtime shift, normally assigned to Battalion 2 at the time, so I was pretty familiar with the area. It was afternoon, I believe it was about 15 hours in quarters. We get knocked out on fire. It was came in as an intersection of Jackson and Caldwell. And it was a warehouse, had several calls, so you knew you had something.
When we first arrived, there was charged smoke on the second and third floors, not extremely turbulent, not anything aggressive, but enough to say there's something going on in this building.
As soon as I walked in to be encountering that much heat, I knew it was going to be different at that point.
Engine 15, Engine 5, Engine 16, Engine 21, Truck Sequence 7, Battalion 2, Jackson and Caldwell on a report of a building on fire.
Engine 15's on scene. We have a 3-story warehouse. It's going to be a working fire.
Engine 15, 3-story warehouse working fires.
Engine 15 Battalion 2. This is going to be the 3-story. It's on the corner. Battalion 2's okay.
We arrived traveling on Jackson Street northbound, so we arrived from the northwest of the structure. From the west side, there was nothing showing. The west side was a 4-story part of the building. As we rounded onto Caldwell off of Jackson, there was smoke showing from the second and third floors on what eventually would be side 4 and side 1.
Engine 9's in service. Engine 9 Battalion 2 more response. Battalion 2's okay. Engine 16's over here. Engine 15, you need water? Engine 15 is in positive water on the corner of Jackson and Caldwell. We're set up on the north side of the building. We'll need companies on the east side.
We stopped at the corner. There was a hydrant there. I had Sarge get in water. I knew with the height and the size of the building, the collapse could have been an issue. So I did instruct him to stay on the north side of the street as he traveled down Caldwell. There was a moment where he asked what I wanted, and my response was just a second, trying to gather my gather all the information I could in that moment to figure out where we were going to go from there. As we laid into the front of the structure, staying on the north side of the street.
Truck 2, Battalion 2, Engine 5 on scene.
1926.
Battalion 2 radio. I'm going to be command post to be in front of the structure. Go ahead and start me PD for traffic at the adjoining intersection. Start me LG&E. Command to Engine 16. Go ahead and send me up a level 1 red. 1 member for accountability.
Engine 16's okay. Engine 16 Battalion 2, we're at Jackson, Kentucky. You want to lay in?
That's correct.
Engine 16's okay.
Captain Pierce was working overtime as well that day. Arrives on scene, he gave a great description of the building. We still didn't have a correct address. Once I responded with Truck 2, Engine 5, we arrived on scene. We had a 3-story warehouse in the front portion and it was attached to a 4-story in the
Engine
rear.
5 in the rear. Roger, walk back. Commander radio. Correct address is going to be 506 East Caldwell. We got a 3-story warehouse, heavy smoke pushing from the number 1 side.
I was riding in my normal apparatus, Engine 5 as captain. The alarm came in for warehouse fire at East Caldwell and Jackson. We made our way there, went pressing, coming down Caldwell, we can see smoke. We pulled up and my driver at the time positioned at the 1-4 corner where the front apparatus met the corner of the building. Once we got the apparatus, me and my firefighters did a size up together, pointing out what we saw, where smoke was coming from. At that time, there was a company about to make entry at the front door. Me and my firefighter discussed. We were gonna go in. I was gonna take my tick, see what we could see.
Although there was smoke pushing out of windows that were boarded up, there was still concern about where is it and what is it really. So the initial action was a blitz nozzle to bring to the front door. There are 2 doors kind of right in the center of the building on the north side. We brought the blitz nozzle to there, forced entry, Tower 2 showed up kind of right in that same time frame as we were getting our line placed.
Upon arrival, we encountered a large warehouse with heavy smoke pushing out. Started to look for positioning. There was no good rear access. So Engine 5 went around and we took hydrant on the corner of Caldwell and Hancock and proceeded to position on the number 1-2 corner.
When we forced the door, the conditions were a lot lighter inside than what the exterior showed. So a decision was made, building being completely boarded up, There were no obvious signs that on the one side of the building it was smoking, the other side it wasn't. Just the whole building kind of had that hazy smoke from all windows.
As soon as we got there, I had my sergeant place his master stream to the top windows where most of the smoke was coming out of, and I had my firefighter grab a blitz and bolt cutters because we had to force a rear gate in order to get rear access.
7 Battalion 2, we're on scene on the southwest side corner.
Commander Radio, go ahead and secure the channel and start me another truck company.
Engine 15 Battalion 2, we made entry on side 1.
Truck 1, we're 9th and Broadway, shells responding.
Truck 1 Ave, you're responding at 1629.
It's 16W Battalion 2, level 1 red established. Truck 3 is responding. Command's okay. Here's the 21 on scene.
21 on the scene, 1630.
Engine 9's on scene. Training 805, the radio. We need police for traffic at Jackson and Caldwell.
Training 85, I'm okay, I've got it in there.
Number 1 side structure.
Command's okay.
Engine 5X, engine 5 hydrant, 10 water.
So we got there, we got everything set up. I knew the magnitude of the building, went ahead and started extra engine, extra truck. We got there, I talked with the captains on truck 2 and engine 5. Truck 2 was in the front with engine 15. They made entry. They did a really quick investigation, and they, at that time, it's either would they open the man door up in the front, and I also found out that engine 5 had opened up a loading dock door. It would have been on the number 3 side, and once that happened, conditions changed drastically.
Within a very short period of time of making entry into that doorway, we moved in to a interior wall that was another doorway. We opened that door, and there was fully involved room of fire, which would be a warehouse side. The only thing noticeable on the tick was the entire ceiling was, engulfed in flames. So kind of knowing at that moment that we were not going to do much with what we had, it was about the same time we got pulled out.
7 Battalion 2, heavy smoke on the number 3 side, pushing from the 3rd floor.
Commander, Quint 7, what's your location?
Located on the 3-4 corner.
Command's okay.
Engine 9 radio, Army Police for traffic at Kentucky and Hancock.
Okay, police for Kentucky and Hancock as well.
Battalion 5 to radio, fill out the second alarm. Have staging at Caldwell and Jackson. Have them come in from the north.
Staging at Caldwell and Jackson, have them come in from the north.
Training 802, 808, and 804 on scene.
Training 82, 804, and 88 at 1632.
Commander, truck 2W, go ahead and give me a primary search on the 1st floor.
Battalion 7 on scene.
Battalion 1 responding on the scene. Truck 1 on scene.
Attention engine 17, engine 2, engine 18, truck 3 on a second alarm at Jackson and Caldwell. You need to stage at Caldwell and Jackson and enter from the north.
I was at headquarters. I responded on the second alarm, but got there pretty early in the incident. When I got there, I took Division 3 in the rear and directed operations from the back of the building.
Colonel Croney arrived on scene. I'd already set up command. He arrived on scene, he took command, and we went ahead and hit the second alarm. I became operations at that point. It wasn't even 6 minutes before we arrived on scene, made entry, and it changed so drastically that we decided to pull everybody out, and we went defensive at that point.
Sergeant Ramsey is who was driving that day on 15s. He had already switched over to volume, he was already setting up the deck gun, and there were additional big pipes being pulled as the truck company was softening the building, opening up windows, trying to gain some sort of access.
Once we evacuated, my sergeant and the firefighter at the time, riding in sergeant position, had already started setting up the aerial, preparing for defensive operations. They set up engine 15, I think it was engine 15 that supplied us with water, and then we just tried to get waters through the different openings, different windows of the 1-4 corner.
Battalion 5 to radio, give me emergency evacuation. Battalion 5 to all companies, exit the structure.
Everyone evacuate the structure. All units at Jackson and Caldwell evacuate the structure. Emergency traffic, evacuate the structure at 1633.
Commander Quint 7, go ahead and put up your ladder 5. Truck 3, go ahead and put up your ladder 5 for defensive operations.
Chief 5 radio, Chief 5 command, Battalion 2's operations.
Chief 5 command, Battalion 2 operations 1634.
Once we were told to evacuate, we went defensive immediately. Luckily, my sergeant and the firefighter that came over to drive for that day, they had already started setting up the area.
So as we pulled out of the building and realized that the conditions have gotten worse, we moved the blitz nozzle kind of away from the front door and moved it back across the street, as most companies did on the number one side. I think everybody was aware of the condition and the age of the building and was basically preparing for the potential of a collapse.
And when I talked to Major Dean, he was an incident commander at that time in Battalion 2, and he had already asked for an extra truck, extra engine, and then they ended up filling out the second. After communicating with him for about 5 or 10 minutes, I recognized the fire condition was getting worse, and I went ahead and filled out the third alarm.
Command to radio. Go ahead and fill out the third.
Filling out the third at 1646.
Command to Battalion 4. You go be staging. I'm filling out the third. Go ahead and set up staging for the companies coming in so we get a
On this particular day, I was detailed to Battalion 4 in the afternoon to ride up for about an hour, hour and a half. And as soon as I got in the office, I overheard the dispatch on the radio and waited to listen for the call in, and having a good knowledge of my first alarm district and the conditions of that particular building before the incident. After hearing the initial call in, I went ahead and started to that location.
Command, do you want me to send Battalion 3? He's the only district chief left in the whole division.
That's negative radio. Leave them in place.
That's engine 22, engine 20, engine 19, and truck 8 on a third alarm fire at 506 Caldwell Street. 506 Caldwell Street. You need to respond to staging at Caldwell and Jackson and enter from the north.
I was assigned staging, and from that point forward, I tried to organize incoming companies and establish a staging location.
Command had struck a third alarm, and I think at that point, once we went defensive, we were concerned with collapse zones because the front portion was 3-story, the back portion was a 4-story. The 4-story was not involved. Once we set up staging, I think staging did a really good job of directing companies in. I feel like the positioning in the number one side, as firefighters, we tend to go towards the building or towards the flames. We didn't have a whole lot of room there. We just had the street, and we had a park across the street, but we had to access an alley that was running north-south that kind of helped later on in the fire.
Truck 1 operator. We've got visual fire on the first floor. About 100 feet in. The principal can additional hand line in that rear outlet door. Operations okay. Do not enter that structure. If you can hit it from the door, that's fine. Command to Division 1 leader. We got fire pushing out through the side 1 now. What's your location?
Staging to all incoming companies. Approach from the north. Staging is going to be on Jackson from Breckenridge.
Once we got the collapse zone set up, we set up some fire line tape, and probably not even 20 minutes after we pulled everybody out, the number one side collapsed.
We have had a collapse. We've had a collapse in the front on the number one side.
Collapse on the number one side in the front. Collapse on the number one side in the front.
Truck 8 on scene.
Okay, 1655.
All companies operating the number one side, you need to back away.
Division 4 to engine 9. Shut down your master stream.
All units on scene of 506 Caldwell. There is a collapse on the number one side of the front of the building. You need to evacuate. Again, all units on the fire scene of 506 Caldwell. There's been a collapse on the number one side of the front of the building. You need to evacuate at 1655.
Accountability to all companies. Conduct a PAR.
So we did a PAR. Everybody was okay. Nobody got hurt. So then pretty much after that, the number 4 side would have been the 1-4 corner. Once the number 1 side collapsed and they got a ton of air, the building really took off. So we just had to maintain our safe distance out of the collapse zone.
Once the collapse did happen, command called for taping off the area, the first collapse. So we were able to kind of tape off an area that ended up being the right area to tape off as the secondary. And then I think there was a third collapse, which wasn't as large, but they all kind of contained themselves into the building and just into the street.
Division 1, engine 17 and engine 15. Let's move your apparatuses back. Engine 4X, engine 4 engine 4X, charge man.
4X is okay, water's coming.
Commander radio, situation report. We have a partial building collapse in the front on side 1. We have no equipment damage, and we're working on getting the power. And during that second building collapse, it exposed the front side of the building to give us more effect on our master streams to find out where the seat of the fire was at.
Partial building collapse, side 1 in the front, no equipment damage, working on getting parts, 1657.
Operations all companies in the front. Only the top power line is active, the rest are dead.
And about 15 to 10 more minutes into the incident, we had our third collapse.
Truck 8 to Division 3 leader, number 4 wall on the 3 side corner. Looks like it's gonna fail.
If there's anything I'd really learned from that fire or anything that I would have done differently, I might have, I really feel like if I would have hit the second alarm maybe like 20 to 30 seconds faster, I don't really think it would have done that much good because companies are listening and things change so rapidly that fire was well involved. It had been burning for quite a long time.
And what helped us out in this incident a lot, the first alarm companies was very familiar with the area and the building itself. And that took a lot of positioning issues and water sources out of the equation.
Water movement. I mean, fortunately enough, I can't speak for my company, but I remember talking to other guys on scene that were familiar with the area that knew that mains on Jackson versus mains 2 or 3 blocks away, I think there were companies laying in. So that usually is when we're talking about how much water we were trying to move, that was a good move on those companies' part as far as seeing that as they were arriving on the second to know to grab water from a distance.
Felt like our crews did an excellent job with positioning, the way that everything went. I think it went great. One thing I wanted to point out too is the address came in as an intersection, Jackson and Caldwell. There wasn't an accurate address. I did give that information as soon as I found out pretty much 30 seconds after I arrived on scene to set up command. Once I did that, that's supposed to trigger on the iPads that it's a dangerous location. But I think most of the people that were involved and on the first alarm and second alarm were very familiar with the building. But I feel like that pre-planning, I think that really paid off.
You know, the positioning initially was almost like what we would do on a structure, like a single family resident, right? Like we're gonna pull to the center of the house, maybe just past. On this, we weren't gonna pull past. We were positioned more toward the center than the number 1-4 corner. So in hindsight, we probably would have stopped a little shorter, which would have kept the truck back as well. So that would have, not that we were in the collapse zone, but if we were gonna be in a better position, you know, 50 feet back would have been more optimal.
It's Colonel Mark John now, but he was a major at the time. He was coming north on Jackson Street, and once we introduced air into that building, he even talked about how things changed so rapidly. So that's the importance of that is, you know, the flow pass, just knowing that it's real. You open up a door and you introduce that air and that fire pretty much just exploded.
Be familiar with your area, be familiar with your buildings, the size in your districts, because we got more of these buildings throughout our department, throughout our districts, a variety of different size buildings. And another takeaway is just awareness. Awareness of your surroundings, awareness of overhead wires, awareness of your positioning. You have to be aware of what's going around you and what your members are doing. Company commanders, take responsibility of your operations and your members, especially on incidents like this. And when we set up staging, I assigned one of the acting battalion chiefs to staging, and they've done a really good job in staging and keep me informed on what we had in staging. Once we utilized our last engine in staging, I was not going to call any more equipment, because that would actually depleted a lot of our other response throughout our department. So the takeaway from this, I feel, is the safety of our members. When we put perimeter tape up, perimeter tape is put up for a reason, especially the red tape. The red tape is for the safety of our members, to stay away from that tape, keep your distance from the tape, because the collapse zone at that narrow street, it wouldn't have really affected the collapse zone, because the collapse zone When the bricks fell on that first and second and third collapse, the bricks actually impinged out past the perimeter tape. So our members got to understand that we cannot itch up against that tape or go crawl underneath that tape to move hand lines for any reason whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, we want everyone to go home just like they come in that morning. And we could have lost about 2 or 3 companies on this incident. And we come out on this incident only with minor injuries, or minor scratch and bruises.